Good afternoon. I'm Joyce Seidman.
I'm Peter Garred, and this is Futurescope. Human genes are taking on a new shape for the 80s. Although the age of denim is still very much alive, human genes can now be manufactured mechanically.
Unfortunately, manufactured genes might not do anyone any good if Montreal has an earthquake. An earthquake could occur in our lifetime. Our second subject today deals with the risks and safety measures involved in earthquakes. We'll take a further look right after this. Everyone is familiar with Calvin Klein genes, but you probably haven't heard of Kevin Ogilive genes. He designs genes of a different nature.
Dr. Ogilive uses a machine that manufactures DNA molecules at a fast rate. What used to take up to 6 months can now be done in a matter of hours with this machine. The importance of this is that gene manufacturing is now economically viable. Marissa Tanieri of Futurescope spoke to him in his office, and here's what he had to say.
Designer jeans are quite popular with the fashion conscious of North America. At McGill University, Professor Kevin Ogilive is studying designer jeans, but of a different kind.
That's right. We're designing genes, but not those that clothe animals, but those which make animals.
A gene is a DNA molecule which contains a special instruction for a cell to make a particular molecule. A gene is made up of a whole lot of units hooked on one after the other, like the cars in a train.
Let us then speak about this gene manufacturer or this gene synthesizer.
Well, the gene synthesizer is a machine which makes pieces of DNA, that is, pieces of genes, automatically. It's based on chemistry we developed here at McGill and designed an instrument around the chemistry. The applications of the synthesizer are that it allows us to potentially make genes for hormones that are of importance in the body, like insulin. It allows us to perhaps make new vaccines that may help us against diseases for which there are no vaccines at the moment. And of course, there is always the possibility of making new catalysts for industry and new procedures for agriculture, for example, nitrogen fixation and things of that nature.
This machine is our DNA synthesizer. It's an instrument we have developed in our lab to fully automate the production of DNA. This machine can do in 6 hours what formerly took 6 months of manual labor to accomplish.
So what is the first step to this gene synthesis?
The first step in synthesizing a portion of DNA involves the use of this unique silica gel, which we have developed in our laboratory. This is a very fine silica, very much in chemical composition, like the ordinary sand one finds on the beach. However, we are able to grow our DNA molecules on the surface of this sand. To do this, we take the sand and place it inside one of these hollow stainless steel tubes.
Therefore, once this tube is filled with the proper amount of silica, what is the next step?
Okay, once the tube is filled with silica, all we have to do is attach it onto the machine, and then we're ready to start synthesizing our DNA sequence. The machine does this by using the reagents that are kept on this shelf. The important reagents are the 4 units of DNA that, when assembled, make up the code in DNA. These are represented by the 4 different colors. The actual sequence of these units that we want put onto our DNA sequence is determined by our microprocessor, which we have up here. It does this by withdrawing a reagent from one of the bottles and taking it from the bottle through a series of valves down to this pump. The pump pushes the reagents up to our column, which contains the silica gel. The reagents then stick to the silica. They react to form our product, which stays inside the column. The excess reagent leaves the column and goes into our waste bottle.
This synthesizer will eventually be used in pharmaceutical companies and the agricultural industry to help develop new products in the future. I'm Marisa Tanieri reporting from McGill University.
Dr. Ogilvie is with me in the studio now, and he's going to discuss with us a little bit about his research that he's been doing. Dr. Ogilvie, I understand that the machine is capable of developing new vaccines, and I'm just wondering what the potential of this new invention really is.
Well, the potential from having the ability to rapidly produce genes is really quite fantastic in terms of future operations. The areas include new vaccines, as you've mentioned, the ability to make hormones, like insulin, for example, to develop new areas of agriculture, and new catalysts for industry down the road.
In terms of industry and agriculture, I noticed in the segment there was some relation to putting this product on the market to develop either new products or something. I wasn't...
Well, the use of the ability to make genes rapidly is that you can make a gene for any product that you're interested in producing.
Excuse me, would that be a biological product, a fertilizer, a plant, or what would it be exactly?
Generally, they're molecules called proteins, which are present in all living organisms.
Okay.
And proteins have a wide variety of uses and functions in living organisms. Some proteins are hormones, like insulin. Insulin is a regulatory hormone, and we all know how important it is. Other proteins are catalysts in living systems, enzymes, and still other proteins make up meat and things of that nature, which we're all familiar with, high protein diets, and we won't be making those with this technology, but others can be used to make new vaccines.
So virtually anything is possible. The roof, the sky is the ceiling.
As long as it's a protein.
I see. So would we be able to make food substitutes with this at all?
Well, it's possible that one could enhance certain qualities of food. Perhaps one would more likely change the genetic character of the plants that are generating, for example, a particular type of food product, rather than just using this technology to make a specific protein that you might add to foods as a supplement.
I see. I noticed you brought with you some beads into the studio, and I was wondering if you could just sort of tell us how your machine functions and to bring together these DNA molecules.
Fine. Well, a DNA molecule or a gene is a material that is made up of individual units, much like beads. And we can think then of a gene as being a series of beads strung together on a string, like I've brought in here today. And if we consider that a gene, this is a piece of a gene, let's say, then we can see that there are 4 different colored units making up this particular piece of gene. And there are only 4 different units making up all of the genes in living organisms. Now, our machine is capable of taking the units, starting from the units, and having one piece, the first unit, already attached to an insoluble material, like a piece of sand. Our machine delivers the successive units, 1 unit at a time, every 30 minutes. And so essentially, it's just adding the beads on a string, and it adds 1 unit every 30 minutes, until, of course, one has the whole segment produced.
How do you get these genes or these proteins to come together, to fuse together, that process in a machine or in a test tube?
Well, it was the question of developing the chemistry that allows you to have a sticky end, let's say, on each unit, so that when you deliver it to the surface of the units that you've already added together, that it will add on to the end unit. And the secret was developing a sticky process that would work very rapidly.
What is that sticky process?
Well, it's a chemical modification. It's a little hard to describe in quickly in terms of terms, but it would look much like a coupler on the end of a car in a train. When you bring the units together in a train, you have a coupler that attaches onto the previous one. So we have a chemical unit which grabs onto the front end.
Okay. When making these genes, is there any possibility of it stimulating or causing some sort of mutation in the genetic makeup of anything? Any negative consequences?
Well,
not that I'm doubting your discovery or anything. I just think that maybe people are skeptical about products on the market these days and what they're all about. People don't know, and that's why I was curious.
Well, those are very reasonable questions. And of course, in science fiction, we can speculate in terms of a lot of effects on life down the road. Fortunately, at this stage, the chemical synthesis of genes is probably the process that's least likely to give us any difficulty, because we can make certain that we design a gene for a specific protein.
So we can make a perfect gene then?
Hopefully, that's right.
Oh, that's good. So can we prolong life or prolong our mortality on this basis? Can we substitute the existing cells or anything in our bodies?
Well, at the present moment, it's more likely that we can prolong life by preventing certain diseases. For example, if we use a synthetic gene to produce a protein that is useful as a vaccine, then obviously we can prolong life if that vaccine prevents some terrible virus from getting into our system.
Thanks very much, Dr. Ogilvie. We'll be back after this. Last summer, the federal government put Montreal in the highest risk category for earthquake potential.
The frightening thing about earthquakes is there's no warning for them. Buildings are being designed to withstand earthquakes, and the seismograph, an instrument that records all vibrations in the earth, is being used to forecast earthquakes. But earthquake prediction is still being perfected. Futurescope's Leora Frucht explored the technology being developed to study earthquakes.
Earthquakes are not something we normally associate with Canada. We delude ourselves into thinking earthquakes only strike in other countries, yet every year about 300 shocks are recorded in Canada.
Once in 10 years there could be an earthquake of intensity 4, but once in 200 years there would be one of intensity 7. Now, an intensity 7 earthquake will cause severe damage to many, many structures.
There are two ways to minimize the effects of earthquakes: by forecasting earthquakes so that people can be evacuated from unsafe structures, or by building structures that can resist earthquakes. Canada has focused mainly on this second approach by adopting a building code that applies to all tall buildings, hospitals, and schools.
The philosophy behind Canada's building code is that structures should be able to withstand the slight tremors that can be expected during the building's life, as well as larger and more improbable events. Dirk Dressel designed La Banque Nationale du Paris.
We follow the National Building Code of Canada, which divides Canada into 3 zones of earthquake. And Montreal is in the middle zone. There are zones that are half as much earthquake as Montreal, and there are zones that are twice as much as Montreal.
How risky is being in the middle zone?
It's, we don't consider it very risky, no. In fact, when we design for it, we try to eliminate the risk. If we get a really strong earthquake, there's a good possibility that there would be glass damage on the outside in certain places. And there would be damage on the inside to architectural finishes.
But how real is the risk of an earthquake here in Canada? I asked Professor Selby, who teaches engineering at McGill.
Well, Canada varies from location to location. In the St. Lawrence River Valley, for instance, there is a considerable risk of earthquake. It's classed as a Zone 3 in Montreal. The lower St. Lawrence Valley is Zone 4, and that's the equal to the western coast of the North American continent, which includes Los Angeles and the well-known earthquake zones.
Zone 4 is pretty high then.
Oh, that's right. That's a maximum probable intensity.
Can you tell us what exactly an earthquake is and how is it caused?
Well, most earthquakes begin, as you can see in this diagram, there's a shrinkage of the Earth's crust, and as a result, along some fault line, there is a displacement of one side with relation to the other side, and this releases a tremendous amount of energy, and this energy then reverberates through the Earth's crust and causes a shaking effect. In easy-to-understand terms, if you throw a stone into a still pool of water, there will be a series of ripples that come out from this central point here. That, in terms of an earthquake, this is called the epicenter, and we could perhaps see what effect this has with a wave that is transmitted outwards. Now, this wave involves both upwards and horizontal motions. The horizontal motion is about 4 times as large as the vertical motion. It's the horizontal motion that causes the principal problem in relation to buildings and structures. Perhaps we can best see the effect if we look at this little model here, and if you could imagine this as a tall building, tall and slender, and then we were to pull the rug out from underneath the building, so to speak, like this, we can see that the book will fall over in exactly the same way as if I had applied a force like that. And so if I just pull this out from underneath, the book falls over. And that's the effect that an earthquake or this strong ground motion has on a building.
Fortunately, Canada has never experienced the kind of earthquake that leaves millions of dollars in damage and thousands of deaths in its wake. Our government has taken some preventative steps, but maybe not enough to keep that scenario from ever becoming a reality. This is Leora Frucht in front of the Palais des Congrès in construction in Montreal.
With me now is Dr. Vincent Saul of the Department of Geological Sciences at McGill University. Dr. Saul, do we really face the possibility of a major earthquake here in Canada, or particularly here in Montreal?
Yes, we certainly do, Karen. This is based upon over 400 years of historical records and about 75 years of instrumental records, and particularly on our present understanding of the geological structure of the Montreal region and of the adjacent New England states and Ontario.
Mm-hmm. And can you predict how serious it might be?
We can pretty well assign a maximum severity to it. At one stage, the earthquakes that have occurred in our region were considered perhaps to be the largest ever anywhere on Earth. This is probably not the present view. We've been demoted slightly, but nevertheless, a very large earthquake could occur. And from this very large earthquake, all earthquakes ranging down to much smaller ones that we've already experienced in the last year or so, of course, could occur.
Mm-hmm. So what exactly would happen during the earthquake? Do bridges collapse? Do just a few dishes rattle? And what would be the consequences?
Well, this is basically unknown, but it depends on the severity of the quake and where it's located with respect to the structure you're talking about. Certainly, as far as rattling dishes are concerned, this would happen, and this has already happened, and windows have been broken and so on. I think the general view is that a modern structure, a bridge or a building, probably would be, the structure itself would stand a quake. A lot of the interior features, hanging bits of hardware and so on, could come down on your head. And many of the deaths in earthquakes have come from these rather minor conditions.
Mm-hmm. How advanced are our methods of prediction here in Canada?
Well, such as they are, they're quite advanced. The major lack is not a quality of observation, but more a density of observation. We need to know more about where the earthquakes are and what the movements are in local areas. The Montreal area is just shot through with faults, and one thing that's quite certain now is that almost every earthquake is localized by a pre-existing fracture. And to know where the fractures are, and particularly to know which ones are dangerous, is the important question.
So do we rely only on technological science for this, or are there some natural things? I've heard that uncharacteristic tides or animal behavior could be indicative of an approaching earthquake.
The problem is quite complex, and every possible clue is used. Animal behavior is one subject of current interest, but
what would an animal have to do that would make it look suspicious?
Well, just something out of the ordinary routine. I suppose a dog biting his master, something like that. But in the more specific cases, for example, cows being unwilling to go into the field, which subsequently is a field where there might be a landslide or something. I think the reality of that is probably there. There is a correlation, but the basis of it is probably not any occult ability on the part of the animal. I think it's more a matter of their habitat and their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. I think if you or I were to spend the night, not together, but if we were to spend the night unclothed in an open field, we'd be very, very aware of ground vibrations and things of that sort. And with no TV to watch or whatever, then we would be aware of the environment. And I think this is largely the basis of what the animals are doing.
Mm-hmm. So how seriously would that be considered? Does it have to be supported by evidence like with the seismograph?
Not necessarily. Where you have a high population density, in fact, the only clear-cut case of an earthquake prediction that I'm aware of was in China, where a large population was alert to the possibility of an earthquake and were conditioned to look at variations in animal behavior. And some of these variations were quite severe. For instance, snakes and so on coming out of hibernation, coming into freezing ground and actually dying. And that supplemented the seismographic information. But mm-hmm. Even by itself, I think this would have been a very good predictive signal.
So where's the safest place to be during an earthquake?
The safest place would be out in the country somewhere, a long way from the epicenter. If you're in a populated area or within a building, it's generally considered that one should get under a doorway or under a table, something like that. But the Chinese effort was always to get people outside, if possible. Mm-hmm. I think the danger of being swallowed up by a crevice, which many people seem to have, is scary but extremely rare.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for being here, okay. And we'll be back shortly.
Kidney patients had to spend up to $5,000 for a dialysis machine, but the artificial kidney, which attaches to the veins in the wrist, will sell for only $50. I'm Peter Garred.
I'm Joyce Seidman. Join us again on Futurescope.